going on, folks? Welcome to Got Your Back NHL edition, our first podcast of 2024. Thank you for all your downloads and subscriptions in 2023. Let's get set for a hell of a year here on Got Your Back NHL edition, shall we? As always, it's brought to you by our fabulous title sponsors, Kuma Outdoor Gear. They got a wide range of gear to fit all your outdoor needs, from tents and sleeping bags, travel games, pet products, drinkware. They got that wonderful switchback heated chair as well. It is fabulous product. I love it. Have it all over the house. Use it regularly. And how about this? Gotta love the coffee mug. And this cool new mint green color. The guys are super jealous. Pierre LeBrun, Mike Johnson standing by to join us. Check out all that Kuma has to offer. Experience luxury outdoors. KumaOutdoorGear.com is the website. Welcome back to the podcast, my friends. Now, big debate between Jason Strudwick and I, Johnny, Pierre, on how deep into the year you can say Happy New Year. And hey, hope your New Year's going great. Do you have a hard and fast rule, Johnny? We can start with you, because I can tell you Struds is straight up being rude to people. Straight up being rude to people, rejecting their Happy New Year's.
You know what? I think Struds actually doing a service to people so that they don't have a social faux pas. I am from the school of Larry David. You have until like the third or fourth at the latest. And that is all you get. After that, it's hello. If we're like 5, 6, 7 days in the year, it's the 8th today, Shoggy. I haven't seen you, since New Year's. I'm not going to say Happy New Year. It was a week ago. So much has changed. So I am Larry David. I am Struddy. Absolutely. I don't have time for a New Year wishes. Well wishes, sure. Hey, how you doing? Hope everything's going well, Pierre. I hope you're great. I don't need to say Happy New Year to your Pierre. We are way past it. January 4th, my cutoff deadline for sure.
Also, I totally agree. And also, if you don't know who Larry David is or have never watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, I don't want to be your friend.
It is good TV. It is. It definitely is good TV. And it's that quirky TV, and not a ton of people had heard about it. And then it's just one of those ones everybody absolutely has to watch. I'm with you, Johnny. I'm kind of in that like third, fourth, fifth range sort of thing. The one thing I'll say is that Happy New Year it's different than Merry Christmas or Happy Easter. New Year is a concept. It's like, I'm not saying I hoped your December 31st evening went well. I'm saying I hope your New Year and the days that have followed since have been joyous and good, and I wish you well wishes on those said days moving forward as well.
Listen, I don't care how you interpret it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about January. I get how they
freaking humbug.
I know what you mean, but I don't need it. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Pierre, you got the vintage look. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I can't believe you just referenced Happy Easter. I don't think I've wished someone a Happy Easter in about 30 years. But anyway, I guess that's a comment on me.
There's not a lot of that. Yeah. Pierre, you got the vintage look going today. You got the old school Whalers in behind. You got the Les Nordiques there on the shirt. You're feeling a little vintage today, are we?
Yeah, my wife got me this Nordiques t-shirt. It's kind of funny. There's a picture of me when I was 8 or 9 years old in Hearst, Ontario, where my late grandmother was really excited about the hockey sweater she got me for Christmas. And it was a Nordique sweater, except she didn't know I was a Habs fan. And my face, because I'm trying not to disappoint grandma. But yeah, that's a classic. I still have that photo somewhere.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, lots going around the National Hockey League. So let's dive into our breakdown. Brought to you by Kinprint. Over 100 combined years of experience. If you can dream it, Kinprint can make it happen. Providing embroidery, signage, printing, logo design. Let Kinprint help you take your brand to the next level. They're high quality, top of the line apparel. They can help you with promotional products to showcase your company with class. It's a great family company. See how they can assist you with your needs. Visit kinprint.ca. So we are taping this Monday morning, about 7 o'clock Mountain Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And perhaps by the time people are listening, it'll be dated in that a William Nylander deal will be announced. We don't know for sure, Pierre. But we're going to assume that it's, that it's close. As you've reported, it is in fact close. And that number, Pierre, I don't know how you want to do this. 11.25, 11.5. We've heard a few different things. Let's just assume it's that range.
It's going to be 11.5 unless something has changed here in the last 24 hours. And it could be announced this morning. So by the time you watch this, perhaps already announced. But my sense is it'll be 11.5 million a year times 8 years. And all the bells and whistles that goes with a contract of that magnitude.
Yikes.
For William Nylander.
Johnny, that clap was for the agent?
For welcome to the Wiserhood. Well done, sir. Well done. Yeah. Golf clap. Well done. Because you know what? We should celebrate moments when athletes, the bet on yourself is a bit of an overplayed term, but he was willing to forego the guarantee of a contract in the summer to prove how good he is, to get more leverage, to support that he last year was not a one-hit wonder and he could do it again. And he has done that and then some, and he is going to get paid. And the fact that he probably, we'll get into but he probably made himself an extra $20 million by how well he played in these last 3 months. So I give him full credit, and the agent as well. But that's a big number. And if it ends up being 8 times 11.5, whatever that is, at $92 million, that makes him, one of the highest paid wingers, or the highest paid winger in the NHL. That might be right, Pierre, ahead of Panarin now and ahead of Pasternak. But he's producing like he might be the best winger in the NHL right now, maybe on Kucherov, obviously, who's got a contract that exists. So what's fascinating to me here as we dissect this, my first initial reaction is, one, that's a lot, because I think that the first comparison would be like, that's more than Pasternak. He's not as good as Pasternak. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's where the first place people will go. And I think that's sort of fair. I don't think he's as good as Pasternak. They're exact same, drafted together. They know each other very well, very comparable. But then there's how much better is Austin Matthews than him, because they're on the same team, that internal comparison, and how much he deserves relative to the internal comps on his own team. But I don't know, Pierre, like the 11.5, that seems like a very big number for an amazing player. And this entire conversation, it's not about selling short how great Nylander is. It's just, when you're talking this much money, Pierre, how do they get to that, if it ends up being 11.5, a number that big?
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the impacts in this negotiation was that when Gary Bettman finally confirmed at the Board of Governors meeting in Seattle exactly a month ago, that the cap would indeed go up $4.2 million. I think that emboldened the Nylander camp to say, this is a conversation about the percentage of the cap and not so much just the AV, right? So, yes, he's going to end up making more than Pasternak, but the percentage of the cap is what you got to look at. Pasternak a year ago was negotiating on a cap at the time that's 82.5, and that they knew still that would go up 1 million to 83.5. Nylander is negotiating off a cap that's going up to 87 plus. That's the real life, world that agents and front offices live in. Percentage of the cap.
Correctly. Yes.
Yeah. And so I don't think the Leafs are announcing they think Nylander is better than Pasternak. What they're acknowledging is that those negotiations happen 12 months apart. That's life. The wheel keeps going and the cap's going up. So, I mean, not to bring everything back to Edmonton all the time, but imagine if you're Leon Draisaitl, who might negotiate this summer a year out.
Yikes. MJ, you, and I'm not throwing this in your face in a negative way, MJ, because this speaks to what Nylander has accomplished, but you handicapped this, or Mystic Mike did, in and around the 9.7 range, I think, and now you see where this comes in. He begins the season, I know you don't like that, you can clarify in a minute. He begins the season on a 17-game point streak in a year where he's got it all on the line like that. I mean, that's just baller kind of stuff. The same kind of baller stuff that has you come out post-game with no T-shirt, with no shirt on, and a gold chain to do your media. Like, the guy's just, he's all pizzazz.
He is. Now, okay, you're right. I had him at 9.97. I think I might have said 9.88 just to be cute because he wears 88. In that area, but I had that in August.
I was going to say. Yeah.
And I think, Pierre, the confirmation of the cap going up and the fact that he has been one of the best offensive players in the league this year changed that dynamic. And I said, a month ago, it probably is more like 10.5.
Yeah.
But I did not think he'd
Yeah.
get all the way 11. And I appreciate percentage of the cap as much as anyone. Yeah, that's entirely how this works. That's why Connor McDavid is not the highest paid player in the league. He's the best player. He's not the highest paid. This is how it works. As caps go up, your contract comes due and you get the same percentage. But what's fascinating to me, and this I think, any criticism of this deal should not fall to William Nylander.
No.
Like he got the best deal he can get, the one he's earned, the one that's comparable to other people that have done what he's done on his own team and around the league. What's fascinating to me is the Toronto Maple Leafs in the summer were kind of hoping to get him at like around 9, maybe under 9. Some people in the organization thought maybe just over 9. And I think William Nylander was looking for something hopefully closer to 10. Could they have gotten Pierre in August 15th? Nylander, 8 years, $80 million. Here you go. No trade provision, same structure, all the rest of it. Like I wonder, because the Leafs wanted to say prove it, that how much money it may have cost them while he's proved it and then some over the last 3 months.
Yeah, no question, MJ. And I think that, let's put it this way. Let's go back to where the negotiations really started. And it didn't start well. If you remember, we did some reporting on this at the draft in Nashville, Ryan. There was a bit of a, whoa, you guys want what? And we want to do this. And the two sides weren't very close, which, by the way, is kind of predictable when you start. But back in Nashville in late June, I think that the ask was around $10 million a year from Nylander's camp, and I think the Leafs were hoping to get something in at the time, maybe in the 8s. And again, totally understandable when you're starting. And looking back now, you would have taken 10 if you're the Leafs, but you don't know for sure that this guy's going to go from an 80-point player, which he was for 2 years in a row, to now he's on pace for what is it, 117 or 118? Mm-hmm. That's another stratosphere. He has brought his game to a whole other stratosphere here in half a season. And top 7 or 8 in NHL scoring, peak of his career, 27 years old. I mean, what is the alternative? And this deal is, I think, will get criticized by a lot of people because the Leafs never get a break and never get a bargain with their top players, and that's legitimate criticism. But what is the alternative at this very point, at this juncture? How do you replace William Nylander in July with what's available?
Johnny, do you want to address that in that? I mean, people will look at this and it's top heavy in terms of the forwards. People look at the Leafs and know that it's the blue line that makes it prohibitive to getting to where they want to go. And Pierre, you make a great point. You have to keep your best assets. You can't lose them. It just so happens their best assets have all been up front. But is this prohibitive to being able to raise a Stanley Cup with some of the best players of their generation? Because they're so heavy up front. And are they going to be able to do what they need to do through the rest of their roster? Yes, they're keeping their guys, but are they building a team that can go all the way in the meantime?
Yeah, I mean, until they do, they can't. Yeah. Right, Pierre? Like, until they do, people will say you can't, right? Like, would how many clubs around the NHL would take the Toronto Maple Leafs' success in the regular season in the last 5 years? Like, they are one of the top 3-4 teams in the NHL. Now, I understand one playoff series and that's all that really matters. But they have had good teams. I do think clearly next year is going to be very difficult, right? Austin will be on his new deal. Willie be on his new deal. It's the last year of Tavares making 11. And even though the cap goes up, that cap increase will be eaten up by Nylander and Matthews and their increases. So you're not going to be able to change your team very much. You're going to need an entry-level contract for 1 year. You're going to get both goalies on entry-level deals next year. Like that. You're going to have $2 million in goaltenders next year. That will help them in a little bit as well. But it's after next year. And, think about this. Like, 4 more years of Austin, 8 more years of Willie. Mitch will probably resign for another 8 years as well. Like, yes, the window's now because they're at their best, but they're not leaving. Next year is going to be hard, Pierre, because of John Tavares and his contract. The year after, Tavares will get scaled back, maybe half as much. The cap will go up another $4 million. All of a sudden, then you're going to have that $10 million to play with that you'd like to address the other teams. The question is, what do you do? Like, what are you going to do without William Nylander? What do the Leafs look like? Say,
what I'm
okay,
saying.
take your $11 million, Shoggy. Take it. He walks. Whatever. You're not going to trade him this year. You're going to let him play it out. So he walks. You got $11 million of space. What are you going to do, and how is that team going to be better than what the Toronto Maple Leafs look like now? Now, I don't know who's a pending UFA defenseman. They can sign some, they can go sign Noah Hannafin. He's a very good player, and they could probably sign another pretty good forward alongside with it. So you get Hannafin and Tyler Bertuzzi back for $11 million. Are the Leafs better off than Nylander and an entry-level contract defenseman? I don't know. And think about this, because we know Marner and Matthews are so good together. Someone else has to drive that second line as Tavares ages up and make it go on his own. And as great as Mitch is, he's probably not quite as uniquely talented as Willie to do that. They need Willie and what he brings, the style he plays, Pierre, going forward. So this is the conversation Toronto had. We explore these ideas, but they keep their best player, the one that makes their offense go. Next year will be hard, Pierre, but then after that, it probably eases off to be more like other teams.
Yeah, so you nailed the most important point. It's a 12-month issue. John Tavares will come off $11 million a year in a year and a half, and presumably will want to stay elite. The Leafs will want to keep him, but he'll come back, I think, at a much reasonable figure. So it's a 1-year issue, but it's still a big issue. Number two is, if you really want to peel back the onion, this is why the dramatic divorce of Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan was maybe the worst time event ever for this organization, because there isn't a GM alive that's going to come in as the new GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs and within 4 weeks decide to trade either William Nylander or Mitch Marner. And the reason I bring that up is that Mitch Marner's full no move kicked in last July 1st.
Yeah.
Brad Treliving, in about a span of 4 weeks, had to decide two things. Am I getting rid of either Nylander, who I got to try and sign in the next 12 months, or am I getting rid of Marner before his no move kicks in? And I think 99% of GMs who just took over that job with this team that gets 100 points every year despite their playoff issues would have said, yeah, I'm not trading those guys. And that's fine. That's reasonable. I mean, I don't think as a new person I would have either, except that now you're in this very interesting situation, because with Nylander signed and obviously full no move for William Nylander, this extension, Mitch Marner now this summer, what happens with him 1 year out with 1 year left on his deal? And again, he's got the full no move. Mm-hmm. That's where the interesting situation is going to come up, especially depending on how the playoffs go. If it goes well, then my guess is Marner, probably plays ball and he wants to keep the ball rolling. The Leafs are getting closer and closer. But it's a gong show and all the heat. And Marner, it seems to take a lot of the heat every year the Leafs get knocked out in the playoffs. Is he like, you know what? Maybe I'm not extending. But then what? Doesn't mean you can trade him. So
yeah. Wow.
This whole thing has more layers coming at it.
How about Mitch Marner and Leon Draisaitl? Same thing, same time, very similar scenario. My goodness.
Except Leon has earned and deserves like a $4.5 million raise per year.
Right.
Mitch maybe has earned a $500,000 to $1 million raise. Like the gap that Leon has earned and has been underpaid is so much bigger than Mitch's. But and the other point about this is two things. One, you mentioned the no T-shirt thing. Like part of what makes this contract good for William Nylander is he is that guy. Like he is a guy who doesn't seem quite as fazed by the noise in Toronto, as evidenced by this year. If anyone was going to be kind of bothered by the pressure and the heat and what's at stake, it would be Willie, given what was at stake with his new contract. He does not let this stuff bother him. He just lets it flow off his glorious hair and just rolls right off his back. He does not care. Yeah. I think that's important. If you're going to commit to a guy, this kind of contract and the expectations and pressure that goes with it, it's important, Pierre.
Yeah. Well, think about, we had Mark Scheifele on this podcast, and I think Mark Scheifele, frankly, was more representative of most players in that situation. Mark Scheifele did not hold back, right, Ryan, when he said the relief that he felt when he got his extension done 1 year out. Like, that was a big deal for Mark Scheifele. I think 90% of NHL stars are more like Mark Scheifele. William Nylander is a unicorn. William Nylander is like, UFA year, let's go. Let's go.
Right.
Giddy up. Bring on the pressure.
Don't worry about the $80 million I've left sitting on the table. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw down a 17-game point streak. I'm just going to hit the ground running with
Shaggy,
that.
He's got points
The
in
other thing
every
I would
game
say
but
is,
4.
I know.
so I think Austin Matthews next year, I wish I had written it down. It was in my Nylander piece from Thursday in The Athletic. But I think Austin Matthews' percentage of the cap when his extension kicks in next year is around 15%. Does that sound right, MJ? I think it's around 15%.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
I mean, if I'm Leon Draisaitl, that's the society you live in. I'm just saying you're in the Austin Matthews society, so I don't know how you take less than 15%. You know?
As podcast host, I'm stepping in here. I'm stepping in because you open the door to the Leon Draisaitl extension, which then leads to the McDavid extension, which percentage, we're not doing that. You know why we're not going to do that today, guys? Because we respect the Winnipeg Jets fans far too much. They're already screaming at us for going this long on the Leafs. We maybe should have started with them. This is all the Winnipeg Jets have done. Rattled off 6 in a row, points in 12 straight, played 3 games in 4 nights. Go ahead and win them all. You got the best goals against in the league at 2.38. 9 straight games allowing 2 or fewer goals. Number 1 in the NHL with a .718 winning percentage. Like, it's really been something, MJ. And when you watch the Winnipeg Jets play and you cross-reference these numbers, I mean, we probably should start talking about them as a cup contender here, legit.
Yeah, I mean, what they're doing and the idea that the foundational piece of this Jets team is largely based on keeping pucks out of their net. What are they at now? 29 games of 3 or less? Like, it's an obscene number in today's NHL. 20, like, what are we talking about? That is crazy. And the fact that Connor Hellebuyck has been excellent, as he always is, but he's not been the only reason that their goals against is good. He's not the only reason why they're on this streak of keeping the goals against down. I give the players so much credit. Look at all their numbers, their chances against, their expected goals against, their actual goals against Pierre. And if defense wins championships in some sports, Winnipeg should be considered. Like, it feels like even though they're best in the league, we're halfway through the year. You are what your record says you are, Pierre. And yet, if you were to ask the people to cluster your top 4 or 5 Stanley Cup favorites, Winnipeg would not be in a lot of people's. They would be in the next tranche, like that, 6 to 10. Like, you're there, but they're not really one of the favorites. I think we might start to recalibrate that because they have something pretty special going on right now. In it, and maybe in a departure for some of the criticism of their teams the last 3-4 years, where this year the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, not less than. Right? It's not like they got a good roster, but they don't play that well. They got a good roster. They're playing better than that. And that's the team. That's the group. That's the leadership. That's the coaching. That's an organizational thing. And I think part of the changes they've made have allowed them to maybe, hit this next level.
And I tweeted this on Saturday, and it's funny because it's a tweet that for whatever reason got way more reaction than I thought it would because I was just pointing out facts. But what's amazing is if we go back again to the June draft in Nashville, which now looking back has been this time period last June where so many things could have happened or did happen. But Pierre-Luc Dubois, after asking for a trade, gets dealt that week. And when you talk to other teams that week, they took that as a signal as, oh boy, the Jets are headed for at the very least, some kind of reboot or retool. Where's Scheifele headed? Where's Hellebuyck headed? And let's not do revisionist history and pretend this didn't happen. Connor Hellebuyck was on the market. Mm-hmm. But the issue was, I don't think teams were willing to extend him to the kind of contract that, anyway, let's not get into the whole thing. But the bottom line is he was out there and then he got brought back in as the summer went on. And the patience of Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Jets front office to say, let's just let these things play out and see. And then the heart-to-heart meetings that Cheveldayoff had with Hellebuyck and Scheifele late in the summer, extend those 2 core pieces. And by the way, that trade with LA for Dubois, and listen, Dubois may win a cup in LA, so it's not like I'm criticizing the Kings, but the Jets got some pieces back there that are working for them. And so to where we were in June in Nashville thinking, oh boy, where is this whole Jets thing headed? To where we are today, where they have the best record in the National Hockey League, is an absolutely phenomenal story by any measure.
Really
no
is.
question. No question.
When go ahead,
but
John.
I think you have to just take into consideration, like, the players are not immune to what's going on their team. Like, they see Wheeler getting bought out. They hear, like, they know Hellebuck is out there. They know Scheifele is likely leaving. They both want deals that maybe they're not going to get, whatever. The players deserve so much credit for kind of recalibrating with the group they have, because this is not what they thought in August. Like when before these deals were signed, this is not how everyone was sort of approaching this team. It was like we're in transition, we're going to reload, we're going to trade all these players, we're going to try to reset, but we're taking steps back before we go forward, and they've they've been able to make that adjustment on the fly, which is impressive.
Well, and one of the narratives this year has been attendance issues out there. For the team to turn around and do this, I mean, if there were ever a reason for Jets fans to just bite right back in and buy right back in, this is it. Their star players re-sign and are leading the charge, and they are one of the, if not the best teams in the National Hockey League, and certainly in this moment they are. Pierre, you had a chat with Ken Holland. Nice resurrection here for the Edmonton Oilers. Kris Knoblauch, a couple of significant winning streaks he's put together in his time. Became the random stat, first coach to coach his team to 2 7-game winning streaks in the first 25 games of his NHL coaching career. It's a little bit random there, but based on your chat with Ken Holland, that article is in The Athletic, he showed some sage patience there, I would say, by not overreacting.
Yeah, and I think it's because part of it is it's near impossible to make a trade in October, and number two, making a trade when you're 2-9-1 is like the worst leverage ever. So I think Ken Holland definitely used experience in that lowest of lows moments to try and not do anything stupid. And but he was forced into a coaching change, and one of the things that he reiterated, in our conversation, Ryan, was that they just felt as an organization that they couldn't go too many more games in the abyss. That if they were going to salvage the season, that was the moment that they had to. And they didn't enjoy making that coaching change. Jay Woodcroft's a good coach, but the results speak for themselves. However, when they had that little 3-game losing streak, Ryan, right before the holidays, one of the things Ken Holland said to me is that don't underestimate those back-to-back wins right before the holiday break in New Jersey and New York. He referred to them as character wins. They were down entering the third period in both games. And he said, A, to go into the holiday break in that frame of mind after those 2 wins, but B, those 2 wins got them to 500, NHL 500. And he said that he believed when they made the coaching change that getting to 500 before Christmas was paramount for them to try and then take on the next fight. It's interesting. So it's all sort of happened the way he had hoped from that moment on. And again, they're in a dogfight the rest of the year. I mean, they're in a wild card spot now, but they can't afford to regress. But I tell you what, I like their chances to make it over the other teams in that cluster right now in the Western Conference.
Yeah, they're gonna. I think they're the favorite to make it for sure, Pierre. Although you're right, it's going to be probably tighter than they would want it to be. I think part of it, Shoggy, is again inevitable. They were way better than they were losing with, right? Like you could have gone behind the bench, and they probably would have done better than they had done with Woodcroft, right? Like they were just due for that. But I you know what? We all want action, fire, trade, bury, buyout, whatever. Like staying the course with this team, taking his time with the goaltenders, even still. Like he's not sort of forced a move to go get Peter Mrazek or like whoever, some guy that might be an upgrade on Pickard, whatever. They give him credit, and I guess the team for like not waiting for a move, but turning things around. And McDavid's obviously chasing down the scoring lead, incredible, Draisaitl. But how about Zach Hyman? I mean, so what I like about this story is that I remember sitting in the TSN offices when Zach first got to Toronto, like his first or second year, and you could see the things he did really well, right? Like the work, the forecheck, the facilitation of other good players, but he could not score. Like, he could not put the puck in the net. And we're having this conversation, and I remember trying to but his shooting percentage is 4, and there's no forward in the NHL who shoot 4%, and they go no, he's got no hands. Like, this idea that he was a guy who could not score no matter how good the players he's playing with. And now he got 3 hat tricks, he got 25 goals, he's on pace for 50 for a guy that couldn't score. I think it's brilliant that he is sort of stuck with who he is, but just evolved and grown his game. But talk about shedding a rep here. The idea that he was, stone hands, couldn't put it in the net, and now he's one of the better goal scorers in the league.
And listen, obviously, Ken Allen deserves to be criticized in the Oilers front office for the Jack Campbell signing. There's no other way around it. That's been a complete disaster. But it should be mentioned in the same breath every single time that the other extreme of July 1st decisions for the Oilers has been the Zach Hyman signing, which arguably is maybe the best in a decade in free agency in the National Hockey League. I mean, that's how good that signing has been by any measure at all. And I get it. Maybe the contract doesn't age gracefully because of his age and the way he plays hard. Who cares? We're about to be maybe a year from it paying for itself anyway. It's and
real quick,
the Leafs should have kept him.
He's been incredible. Real quick though, Shaggy, one thing, I may do something on this later. Zach Hyman has learned to become the mirror image of Sidney Crosby when it comes to backdoor availability. Have you seen, Sid goes down there, he turns the skate sideways, he's got a stick in front of it, he gives you all kinds of things that he can hit on the back door and he's going to tip it in. Zach, a righty, does the same thing all the time. He's back there and he's got to skate sideways. He'll take him off the hips, off the shins. He knows, here's the backboard, fire it off me. It's righty, lefty, not quite the same, but I watch him I don't know if he picked that up off Sid or it's just kind of intuitive, but Sid was the first one to sort of offer all those different targets. And Zach does the exact same thing, and he has really good passers throwing it down there. Most of the time it's on his stick, but I don't know how many bank in off his shins or his, butt or his hips or whatever. I just think it's interesting that he's kind of, mastered that little nuance on the back door like Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, interesting to watch in Edmonton. And by the way, Kris Knoblauch, I know the team was ready to turn around, but he deserves a lot of credit here. They're 17-6 under him. But Johnny, this is interesting. He's done things a little different here. The line combinations are something to watch in Edmonton because Knoblauch has loaded up the McDavid line. Hyman and Nugent Hopkins. He's got Leon Draisaitl playing with Ryan McLeod and Warren Foegele. Right. Evander Kane is on the third line with Derek Ryan and Matthias Janmark. So it'll be interesting to see if that is sustainable moving forward.
Because don't you think, Ryan, McLeod should be at center long-term, right?
You would think so. Although, man, was he bad at center for the first chunk of this season. He's been pretty darn good on the wing. But yeah, and that's what the design is.
This gets me to where I wanted to pick your brain, Ryan. I think they should trade for a 1B or a veteran backup goalie. All due respect to Calvin Pickard, I think they need to give Skinner more insurance. But where else would you go? Is it a bottom 6 center? If you're Ken Holland, is it a right-handed shot upgrade on CC? What would you like to see?
Well, I think a top 6 right winger is probably at the top of the list with the idea that McLeod will land back in the 3 center spot. If you're committed to McLeod on the wing, then you need a third line center, flat out, no question. So maybe you get a third line center, Johnny, who could also be a top 6 winger if you needed him to be. Just another option at center in case you want to keep McLeod on the wing. But without him at center, it is thin. You got, all due respect, you got James Hamlin and Derek Ryan as your 3-4 centers. So I think, top 6 right winger if you're willing to put McLeod back at center.
And remember, they knew this and they took a swing at a top 6 right winger. That was Connor Brown.
They did.
Right? That was the guy who was supposed to fill that role to put the lineup in the order that you're looking at for. But I think I do like the idea because when Edmonton took off right away, it was Nuge, Hyman, and McDavid. Their numbers were otherworldly. The goal differentials, all that, but it wasn't driven by high shooting only. It was that's how good they were. They were killing everyone. And then when they lost, they broke that line up to try to help Leon out a little bit more. I'm with right winger, given that I was one, they're not that hard to find. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're asking what's harder to get, right? Like a top 6 right winger that can work with a guy as good as Leon Draisaitl, that's not impossible to find, as opposed to a top pair defenseman or, you know what I mean? So I would think path of least resistance, if you want to kind of keep the top line noted up, and go get yourself a winger, and that would probably be something they'd be able to do before the deadline.
All right, great stuff. 2 quick things before we wrap up the podcast. We got a red card, yellow card, no card coming up because, well, it's the nation's favorite game. But a quick shout out here to Marc-Andre Fleury, ties Patrick Waugh's record. Second most regular season wins, 551. Has a chance to take over number 2 against the Dallas Stars. Johnny, your career has overlapped with his, and Pierre, you've covered him for most of your career. Do we have any good Marc-Andre Fleury stories, Johnny?
Well, I think first off, how he got that tying win kind of sums up his whole career, right? Like the fact that he was on his way to the bench, he comes flying back with a Superman dive, and they get back and rally. He makes that crazy glove save, like one of the most stylish, perfect glove saves. I think it was in the overtime to keep it alive, and then he wins it. I think 2 things stand out. I mean, I've met Marc-Andre many times, never played with him, but he is like so affable, so lovely, so nice and personable. And, if you're going to think traditionally goalies are in their own world and maybe, on their own program, he's the exact opposite like that. And he's been that way for 20 years. That's the way. He's 20 years he's been like that, and he's never changed. He's done it all with a smile and a good attitude, including moments when he lost his starting job and they won a Stanley Cup, and he had to be the backup in really tough moments where he took it all with grace and class. So yeah, that one always. And the other one that strikes to me is like, not that it would have derailed a career that's going to be a Hall of Fame career, but if you think back to the World Junior that he was supposed to, be the star of, and he ended up shooting a puck in off Patrick O'Sullivan and losing a gold medal. Like, from those sort of traumatic beginnings, he's carved out this incredible career. He's one of the best. But I love the way he got that win, because it was him in a nutshell. Not textbook. He's not a blocker of pucks. He's an athlete in there, Pierre, and he does it with great style and a smile to go along with it.
Yeah, one of the nicest guys I've ever covered, ever. You described him perfectly, but such grace and a smile that lights up a room. I don't think that guy's ever had a bad day, despite, he's had some adversity, not only leaving Pittsburgh via the expansion draft, I think was hard on him, but then after finding this new home in Vegas where he's beloved, getting punted out of there, right? I mean, it's interesting the things that have happened to this guy, but I'll tell you a story of that expansion year in Vegas. I had written a piece that the Winnipeg Jets were going to mop the floor with the expansion Golden Knights, and that piece had made the rounds in the Golden Knights dressing room. I remember James Neal giving it to me pretty good. Marc-Andre didn't say anything, but in the hallway after I left the dressing room that day, in between games 1 and 2, I remember that Fleury's agent, Alan Walsh, was walking out with Fleury's wife. And she turned around and said, "Is he the guy who wrote that piece?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, please!" And we all had a pretty good laugh about it. But just an awesome dude, Marc-Andre Fleury. Good for him.
Real interesting on the side, Shoggy, and we won't go down this road, but like for the best on best in 25, he might even be in the conversation for Canada.
Yeah.
Like it's
thin.
I don't know what to tell you.
Which is saying a few things.
Right. That's a testament to him, and also a bit of. But he might be in the top 5-6 contenders to be on that team, which is crazy.
You just popped open a can of worms, and we're just gonna walk away from him lying all over the
Slide
floor.
away comfortably.
It up. Because it is time for red card, yellow card, no card. Gentlemen, for this, we're going to go to one of the juiciest, most interesting stories in the National Hockey League over the last, month or two. I thought this one, because just the granular level that we seem to get detail on. I'm talking Cole Perfetti and Ryan Hartman. So Cole Perfetti takes a stick in the face off of a draw. Post-game, basically tells the media, yeah, he told me that he did it on purpose. If you will remember, Kirill Kaprizov got cross-checked, Brendan Dillon, and left the game. And the sense was Hartman did it for revenge. That's what Hartman told Perfetti. Yeah, I did it on purpose. Well, after Perfetti says that post game, Ryan Hartman then has a chance to have his say, and he goes, he was chasing me around, asking me if I did it on purpose, asked me a few times, and I said, I didn't not do it on purpose. And then kind of says, are things that we say on the ice really going to come out in the media? Like, should it be that way? Maybe it's just the kids these days. He feels that what went on the ice should have stayed on the ice, and that Perfetti was out of line for talking about it post-game. So I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to assign any cards anywhere you want here. Red card, yellow card, no card for either Cole Perfetti for saying what he said post-game, or Ryan Hartman for either the high stick or what he said. Johnny, you can go first, buddy.
Okay. So I like to hand out multiple cards. I'm going red card, Ryan Hartman. Don't you dare say, oh, poor me. He told on me when he's not supposed to. How about you stop swinging your stick around at people's heads? How's that? All right. Not Perfetti, but he's been fined 7 times. So I don't want to hear him say, that's not fair. You can't do that to me. How about you stop hitting people in the head? You can't do that to them. So red card for Ryan Hartman for the actual clip. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to say red card. No, I'm going to say yellow card for copping to it. Because listen, for Ryan Hartman saying, oh yeah, I did it on purpose. I would say people say all kinds of stuff on the ice and not all of it's true and not all of it's, they intend to. If that was the case, I would have been killed 100 times over because I was being threatened to be killed every single game. I'm going to kill you, Johnson. I never died on the ice, right? So you say stuff that's not necessarily true before, after, during. So yellow card for saying it. And for Perfetti, I'm going no card. You got smushed in the face. If you want to say that the guy told you he was going to do it on purpose, when you have, a microphone that validates what you're saying, he's not making it up. It's not open to interpretation. He was mic'd up. The organization has heard Hartman cop into this. So no card for Perfetti. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. You want to keep it on the ice, you can do that. But if you don't want to keep it on the ice, you don't owe that to Ryan Hartman. You just cracked your jaw open. No card Perfetti. Yellow for the comment. Red for any problem Hartman has with anything because of how many times he's crossed the line.
So 2 red cards. Is this the first time ever we've given out 2 red cards to one person in one show? I think it might be. 2 red cards for Ryan Hartman from Mike Johnson. Pete?
Yeah, I'll give a red card to Hartman as well. And the other thing about it, too, is that he knows that Perfetti's wearing the mic. The players in the other dressing room know before each game who's wearing a mic in those games. There's no excuse not to understand the fact that you're about to say something that the world may find out about. The guy's wearing a mic. So why are you being a dummy and saying that? So that's a red card for Hartman. And I'm not going to give a card to Perfetti because, we are still the worst sport for athletes being willing to share stuff compared to other sports in terms of drama and controversy. Bring it on. We need more of this, quite frankly, in the NHL. It was a story for a week and for a reason.
So I'm going to go red card to Hartman for doing it because nowhere in the code of keeping each other honest out there does it exist that it is ever okay to stick a guy in the face as retribution for anything. That's not part of the code. You square up and drop your gloves. You deliver a hard hit. You get in a guy's face, but a high stick across the face when a player's bent over and vulnerable in a face-off, that is brutal. So I could give multiple red cards for that. I would, but only 1 red card per specific event. So he's got a red card there. The copping to it, I don't care. I think it's funny. If you did do it on purpose, you might as well tell the guy just to troll him a little bit too. I don't have a problem with the fact that he admitted it. And no card for Cole Perfetti on this. That's the one thing we all agree on. And guys, this is a he said. Hartman says it was in a different context. Perfetti said, but the audio exists. Pierre, what's it going to take to get that audio leaked? How can we hear that audio? We need to hear that audio.
Over the NHLPA's collective dead bodies, I guess.
Man, somebody sitting in the back of a broadcast truck somewhere knows the answer. All right, great job today, fellas. That's going to wrap up the podcast. Big thanks to our sponsors, Kuma Outdoor Gear and Kin Print as well. We're happy to be rocking and rolling again here in 2024. Another podcast coming your way next week. In the meantime, thanks for your downloads and your subscriptions. Keep an eye on our socials. Really appreciate it. It's been a fun ride here on Got Your Back, and it's going to continue. We'll talk to you soon, folks. Have a fantastic week. Happy New Year, Johnny? Happy New Year?